Who's ready for a brand new wish list video? If you are somebody who's looking for some interesting plants to potentially salivate over and potentially even add to your own grow list, stick around with me and let me share my 2025/2026 wish list. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplanty Goodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So yes, this is the video that I know a lot of people look forward to, and this is also a video that I thoroughly enjoy putting together. I'll try to do another one mid-year. I tried to do that last year, and I don't think I did. I think I only ever did one wish list video last year. I'll see if I can do another one as well. I think there's a lot of other content creators that are doing something similar at the moment. I think we all had the same idea at roughly the same time, but I wanted to share with you my wish list kind of coming to the end of 2025 and moving into 2026. Now, I obviously do not have these plants, so I will be putting pictures throughout the video of the plant and also discussing it. I have got a list here because I am never going to remember all of it off by heart. I do know some of it, but for the people that are wondering, I do have some easier to find houseplants and some less than easy houseplants, as well as a good mix of different genera and kind of trickiness to find, if that makes sense. And also some genera that maybe some people haven't heard of before. But because my list is quite large, without further ado, let's dive into the first one. So I'll start off strong with a fern that does not look very much like a fern. And I've got the list here because I need to be able to remind myself. This is a Microgramma vaccinifolia. Cool name, difficult one to pronounce. Hopefully I'll be putting the name on the screen as well. But I mean, look at this plant, because it doesn't look like most ferns that you might be aware of. It does bring a bit of the vibes, and this is part of the reason why I like it, of I think of the rabbit foot fern, if I'm not mistaken, because it's got those kind of really, really hairy stems. Anybody that has been on this channel for long enough will know that I like, I would probably love, more than just like, love a hairy plant. This ticks a lot of boxes. The other reason why I thought this is quite an interesting plant is because it's another epiphytic fern. And for the people that have been here on the journey for a while, my platycerium that I potted up with everybody during the workshop in Malvern this year is doing exceptionally well in its mount. Unsurprising to most people. My blue star fern is doing exceptionally well in a mount. Also, my crocodile fern finally is doing well in a mount. And I say finally because I have never had it mounted before and I've had it die several times on me. Apparently the secret is to put it on a mount because it is an epiphytic fern, much like this one. This is one that a lot of people are just like, it's better if you have it in a terrarium. I am fortunate, and I'm aware of this, that I have this space, my conservatory, which generally has high levels of humidity, so I'm assuming it should be fine in this space as long as I mount it. So hopefully, sometime soon, that might be joining my collection. It also stays quite small, which is a plus in this space. The next one is a Dracaena, and it's the Dracaena sucrulosa Milky Way. Look at those leaves, look at those leaves. There's one that's a splashy one as well. I can't remember the name of that one. But I have never grown this specific type of Dracaena. This is also a Dracaena that was very expensive about a year or two ago when it first started coming onto the market. The reason why I'm putting this on here, and I'm putting it on as a plant that's possibly slightly easier to find, is because I'm starting to see this crop up in plant stores, I've seen this in my local garden center, and I was debating getting it. I have put it back, I've picked it up and put it back several times so far, not because of the price, but mainly because I don't know where I'm going to put it. And because I do know that a lot of people did potentially buy this plant. This part of this video is me asking you very politely, if you've got this plant, what's it been like? Does it grow well? Anything I need to be aware of if I am to add this to my collection? And this is going to definitely be a plant that I do not need to necessarily have in here. This will be going on one of my windowsills. So I'm always on the lookout for nice and interesting plants that I can put in the windowsill rather than in the conservatory, because hopefully this is a bit less of a prima donna plant because it is a Dracaena. But I mean, those leaves, I'm looking down here because obviously I don't have the image that I'm going to be editing in here. I've got it in front of me. Very cool. It's got that white stripe in the middle. It's got some speckling on the green bits. Oh, and I have seen this in person. And when I saw it in pictures, I'm just like, I mean, it's okay. It's not great. But I saw this in person. I'm just like, oh, actually, no. This is a lot better when you see it in person. So not one that I was necessarily considering before, but definitely one that I am considering now. And this next one might surprise a few people because it's not very often that I have a Calathea on a wish list. But the Calathea roseopicta silver plate. I really like the look of this because it's got that kind of silvery sheen on the entirety of the leaf. And from what I can see from this picture, it also gets a bit of a pink blush, possibly when it gets a bit of sun stress. Possibly, I would imagine. Does anybody have this? Because this looks super cool. I know, it's a Calathea. And for the people that have been traumatized by Calatheas, I am truly sorry to include this in my collection, in my kind of wish list. For the people that love Calatheas and always like to tell us about it, what's this like? Because I'm assuming some of you might have this. Do let me know, because I think this plant looks stunning. It looks very different from a lot of other Calatheas that are out there. I know there's a silvery version of a Maranta that people were kind of interested in. That never really did it for me. That silver, that entire leaf being silver, and more specifically that it gets that slight blush to it, has me very interested. Quite where I would put it in here, I don't know, because I'm looking around my space going, where would I put this? I don't know, but very, very cool plant nonetheless. Another one that should be a bit more easy to find, and again, this is one that I wasn't considering for several reasons. One, because I had tried growing these plants for a long period of time and I did not have a lot of success. I have featured a couple of these that I've had in my collection quite recently on some videos actually, and it is another Aglaonema, and this is the Aglaonema Red Fire. I think there is one that's called a Cretan one as well. This might be the same plant, I don't know. They're obviously like more commercial names rather than botanical names, but this is very, very cool. And again, this is one that I don't think does particularly well in pictures. It doesn't come across as well in pictures. I mean, it's quite an impressive plant. You can see from the picture here, like, the coloration that you get on that is insane. And I've always been the kind of person that really truly loves the color red on most things. Like if I could be wearing like fire engine red clothes a lot of the time, I would. I need to buy some more red clothes actually. I haven't bought some red clothes in a while, but love the red on this plant. And again, when I managed to see this in the same garden center, I'm just like, oh, actually, I kind of get the hype on this. And again, I'd seen this specific Aglaonema, this kind of more reddish tinged one, has been around in the market for a very long period of time. But again, because I always thought that they were quite difficult, I struggled with some in the past. I've talked about this when I got like a smaller green form, like a baby plant, and that took forever and it didn't do particularly well and it struggled a lot. And I learned a lot of things, so I'm glad I got a cheap Aglaonema and a small one to learn from that. But now that I have grown my apple fantasy, my pink guava a bit more, and I'm looking at the pink guavas up there, I would be very tempted to try this plant as well. As I have seen from a lot of the comments out there, there's a lot of people that have a lot of love for Aglaonema, and I don't think a lot of people mention them necessarily. So this is one for all the Aglaonema heads out there. And now we're getting into some plants. They're not all in necessary order, basically, but we're getting into some plants that might be slightly trickier to find. And this is one that I have seen on the Grow Tropicals website so many times, and I've still not pulled the plug to purchase this yet. And by the time I do decide to do this, watch it, there'll be none left. This is an Anthurium, so an Anthurium Queen of Hearts. And this is obviously one of the hybrids, but look at it. Look at those leaves. Look at those leaves. Dark, unctuous, textured leaves. Oh, and I think ironically enough, I was going to get the bigger size that they have, which is the picture that I'm showing you here. But I think they've run out of all of those now. They've only got the slightly smaller plants, which is less than ideal. I would like to go for something that's a bit more established, but this is a very cool plant. Has anybody grown this? Has anybody, because it's got two things that might make it challenging, I think. One, that it's a dark plant. My experience with dark anthuriums is they tend to be a bit harder to keep happy, and I don't know if it's slightly velvety, but it's also got texture. It's got all of the things that if an anthurium's got one of those things, it can be challenging. But because it is a hybrid, I don't know if this plant has got what's called hybrid vigor, which is it takes some of the better elements of its parentage, of the plants that it was cross-pollinated with, and is more robust because of it. So I'm hoping this might be one of those cases, but stunning, stunning, stunning plant. Definitely one that I would very intensely consider adding to my collection. As I've said, this is one that's gone into basket and out of the basket and into the basket and out of the basket and into the basket and out of the basket a few times over. And I think at some point I'm gonna pull the plug and purchase it. But and I've got another anthurium now for you. This is one that I have seen again, and I think this was on the Equigenera website. And again, this is one that has gone into the basket, out of the basket, into the basket, out of the basket, into the basket, out of the basket. And it is the Anthurium ovatifolium. And I would imagine if you look at the leaves, the oval element of that kind of would make sense. But I mean, look at the texture of those leaves. Look at the shape of those leaves. And it's got those kind of, so it's really weird because it's got that, it's giving vibes of Syngonium chiapense, I think. I don't think it's going to have that rubberiness based on the pictures that I'm seeing. Unfortunately, this is not one of the plants that I've ever been able to see in person. And it's got that kind of middle vein there, and it's got those two more pronounced veins that go on either side, kind of almost diagonally parallel to it. Oh, very, very cool. I have done something extra in this video, which is I've tried to see with some of these plants if there's any kind of warnings that I could give. So this is one of the first plants that has got a bit of a warning and a bit of a disclaimer to kind of say, check whether or not this is regulated, see if the source, so basically it's not been taken out by nature, because this isn't a plant that comes up very often. I would imagine Equigenera has been growing this for a while, because I've been seeing this specific anthurium on their website for at least 5-6 years now. I would imagine this is something that they've been growing for quite a long time, and it's unlikely that it's being taken from nature, not from them, but for anybody else. But it's one of those things that I would say this is one to kind of bear in mind and just check on it. Oh, and this is a type of plant. Next one is a type of plant that I don't think I have ever featured on here. And I'm so glad that these have come down in price and that we can purchase them locally, because the picture that I've got here is from the Grow Tropicals website. This is the Musa NoNo Pink Variegated. Because a lot of people might know of the Musa AA or EA, or the Florida Musa, which is the white variegated banana. This is the pink variegated banana. Do not get me wrong. I would be happy with either one of those two. The reason why it hasn't been in my wish list for years, and this was on one of my original wish lists 4 or 5 years ago, probably even before I started the channel, is because I have tried growing bananas indoors and I have had screaming success with them. It would do 100% well in this space. The problem is space. The problem is space, because they get big and they get big fast. I don't know about the variegated bananas, if you've ever been fortunate enough to own, grow, and keep it alive, because I know that the white variegated bananas can be a bit tricky to keep alive. These were ones that were stupidly expensive. You could only import them from kind of abroad, and they would come to you as a pseudo stem, like the kind of bulb that you would then plant out, and there was a high propensity of rot. So it's nice to see these as planted plants being available on the market, also not for ridiculous prices. So this is one that I would love to add to my collection. Where I would put it, I don't know. And it's pink variegated. I'm not a huge fan of pink plants, but this speaks to my soul for some reason. But yeah, very, very cool. Very, very cool. This next one is an Alocasia, and it's an Alocasia that I've wanted for a very long period of time. I don't know if it's this specific one. So the Alocasia macrorrhiza Splash Variegated. I think I just want the Alocasia macrorrhiza Variegated, not necessarily the Splash version, but this is the only one that I could find kind of pictures of more recently, because for the people that have been here for a while, and I'll see if I can find a picture and add it here, where it's my Alocasia Variegated, which got huge, but it wasn't the same one. And I remember years ago watching other planting content creators based in the States, and they could get what I think was an Alocasia Microrrhiza Variegated in your big box stores, and they were relatively stable in their variegation. They got absolutely huge and they were stunning, and I could not find that one here. Closest I could do was my Alocasia Variegated. And funny story, and I don't know if people might be aware of this, I mentioned this years ago when I was first starting my channel. I got this from a local plant seller here in my location actually, and it was one that, yeah, it was a small pup plant, and I managed to get it quite large, and I was actually getting messages from some of the companies that we import plants from South America and the Far East, and they were giving me insane amounts of money to sell them this plant, because obviously they wanted to be able to grow it, propagate it, and be able to sell it themselves. I never went for that because I knew that they were going to be able to get it from somewhere else. But to be fair, that is a much more ethical way of getting some of these plants than getting them from nature. Granted, the variegated one, it wouldn't be something that would naturally occur very easily in nature. So I would imagine they'd need to reach out to private collectors to be able to get it. But funny little side story there. This next one might surprise a few people, and it's only because I mentioned this in a video recently. And I'm just like, you know what? No, I think I'm ready to give this another try. And it was interesting to see that it was split in that video. Some people agreed with me that they found it difficult to keep happy, and other people were just like, it's my easiest Hoya ever. The Hoya Bella. And I think the Hoya Bella that I had was maybe a variegated one. Before it was a thing that people were looking for the variegated one. I just struggled a lot with this. I'd be willing to try this again, and I have said if I find this if it comes across my path again in the same garden center that I found it 5 years ago and I tried it, I might purchase it basically. Quite where I'm going to put it, because it really does need to hang, I don't know, but I'd be willing to give it a try and see if I can keep it happy. Shall we have a look at some less than usual plants? These are ones that maybe you might have not have heard of them or even be aware of their genuses. So this is one out there for the cookie lovers. So first one, and I'm gonna butcher this name, is Emblemantha urnulata. Whoa, big name. Look at the leaves. Look at the leaves. This is giving, because those leaves look really turgid as well. So that is giving kind of leaf thickness and texture of maybe like a Hoya. So that's a big tick in its box there as well. But look at that patterning on those leaves. This is giving, I can't remember what it's called now. There is specific plants, genuses that tend to, or a genus of plants that tends to look a bit like turtle backs. And a lot of the times they'll kind of, and that's another plant that I would like. I can't remember, it's completely eluding my brain right now. If I'll see if I can find it in editing and put it somewhere. But this is giving that kind of vibe. Very cool. However, this is another one that comes with a caveat. This is definitely a plant that is considered a bit more rare in the traditional sense. Not necessarily on the endangered list, but again, I'll kind of harken you back to the video that I did with the botanical otter basically, and it was him talking about more about CITES and which plants are in Appendix 1 and Appendix 2, which are ones that you need to be careful of. I don't think I found anything about this plant being in either one of those two indexes, but this is one to definitely keep an eye out and make sure that if you are purchasing this plant, that you are getting it from people that have propagated it ethically and they have not taken this out of nature. Oh, and this one is a succulent plant, and I don't have that many succulent plants currently, and I don't tend to gravitate too much towards succulent plants, but this one I like. This one I like because it reminds me a little bit, look at the picture, it reminds me a little bit of like fuzzy gherkins. And this is a Huperzia urbanii. or Barney. Very, very, very cool. Look at how cool this looks. It does look a bit, I don't know how to describe this. Anybody who has any kind of knowledge of like human anatomy and knows about like kind of your digestive system and your intestines and all these things, I think these look a bit like cilia. Very, very cool. Very, very cool. This also might freak a few people out. If it does, I'm really sorry. I like weird plants. This definitely ticks a lot of boxes. But again, this is one that comes with a warning. They tend to be relatively slow growing. Most Huperzias, they tend to be lycophytes. And it's one that I found this on certain sellers, and they tend to be on the smaller side, which I understand if they're slow growing as well. And if you're getting something that's huge and established, I would be questioning that, because just be cautious that whoever you're buying this hasn't been poaching this out of nature. Smaller ones probably will be okay because there is more of a chance that they've maybe propagated this, and they should be okay. But this is one very cool, but proceed with caution. Oh, and these are the types of plants, and I'd never known them under the name that I'm going to share with you here, but I have seen them before, and they were called something else, and I cannot remember. So this one is a regalia heat resin. Look at it. I think these are quite small, and they look a bit like not pitcher plants. Oh, I cannot remember now. I'll put the name of the plants that I'm thinking of. It's the one with the big bracts and the big blooms that people like. And those plants never really did it for me. These are cool. These are very cool. And I mean, not just the fact that it's got the variegation on either side of the leaf, but it's got a slight pink blush from what I can see from the picture, and reddish pink splashing. This is kind of cool and unusual, and there's different varieties of this plant with different colorations and different patterning. Very, very, very cool plants. And I don't think, depending on where you are, I don't think all of these types of Neuroregalia plants, or if I find the other name, I'll put it somewhere at the top as well, are that difficult to find or even that expensive. But this one is very cool and a bit unusual, I think. And you know, it wouldn't be my channel if I didn't include a Piper somewhere in this. So the Piper Arthanthe. Love all of the botanical names because they're all tongue twisters. Very cool Piper. I've been a fan of Piper for years. I have said this until I'm blue in the face. People that have been watching my channel for a while are probably sick and tired of me saying this, but these look very cool to me. Anything with that kind of texture, corrugated look to that leaf, I am here for 100%. Whether or not this is going to be easy to grow, I don't know, because a lot of the Pipers that we're getting generally available, at least here in the UK, and I would imagine Europe, the Sylvaticum, the Crocatum, I can never remember the other one that I've got. I've got the Sarmentosum, and the other one is Rubesioides. I'm pretty sure, because I have always get stuck in my head with that name. Some of the people that have been watching this for a while have probably been screaming Rubesioides to the screen right now. Really sorry, I am still shit. But this one I think looks really cool, and based on how it's growing, I would imagine it might be an upright Piper, a bit like the Sarmentosum, rather than more of a trailing one like the Crocatum, the Sylvaticum, or even the Rubesioides, but I'm not entirely sure. I just know that the coloration of this as well, some of those leaves look like they're slightly glaucous, so they've got some form of like a silvery sheen maybe to them. I don't know if it's maybe how they've taken that picture, but they look super cool. They almost look a bit prehistoric. The next one is a plant that I did not know that you even had an option as a individual to buy and not a botanical garden, but I have seen this come up for sale recently, and not for a lot of money. Obviously, it would be a very juvenile plant. I think there was somebody on socials that had accidentally got one of these and had grown it and he had multiples. He gave some to botanical gardens and he kept one, and he was able to get it to bloom, and it was a very exciting thing. Amorphophallus titanum. Biggest flower in the world, if I'm not mistaken, which is the corpse flower that you might see a lot of times in botanical gardens. Obviously, one of the pictures here is going to be what the leaves looks like, because again, it just looks like it's a single leaf basically for most of these plants. And when they get huge, they look like trees, but it's still a single leaf because it's not a stem. It is one petiole with leaflets on the top basically. So it is a single leaf. Very, very cool. And obviously I will also add a picture of what the bloom looks like when it's very, very mature. And most people have seen the corpse flower in kind of the news in one way or another, because it's always a bit of a big to-do from the botanical gardens because it takes a very long time to bloom and its sheer size is huge. Obviously it stinks, but just for the novelty factor of this, and if they are kind of a bit more sustainable to kind of get your hands on, and they're not that expensive from what I've seen online, I would 100% like to try growing Amorphophallus titanum. Love, love, love that this is even an option for people now. And this is one that has been mentioned in some other people's wish list, not the specific one I don't think, but this kind of more genus of plants. So this is a Ceratostema pepperportilia, do some salsa. But this is a very, very, very cool looking plant because of the way that it grows. It's trailing. I think I may have had one of the keratostemas on previous wishlist videos. I don't think it was this one, but the way that it trails down, the leaves and the way that it grows and the blooms as well. And I think I've got a close-up of the blooms as well that you can see on here. Very, very cool. I think I saw on a couple of people's kind of Instagram posts that may have been kind of growing this plant because I was trying to see what people's experiences have been with this. Some people were saying it's not a particularly fast grower, so that's something to bear in mind. This is an investment plant in the sense that it's going to take you a long time to get large. Ecuagenera is usually quite good at showing some mature versions of this, and everybody's like, I want that, and I'm just like, you're not going to get that though. You're going to get something a lot smaller, and it's going to take you a while to get it to that, because I would assume it's taken them a while to get it to that level, and they've got near perfect conditions. This, however, is definitely another one to just make sure that you're getting it from reputable sellers that are not poaching this from nature, because it is newly described, this one specifically. Possibly might be vulnerable, not from poaching, but maybe from their habitat being destroyed. So just tread carefully with this one, but still a very cool plant. I don't think all the keratostemas, if I'm not mistaken, are going to have the same risks to them as well. So you could definitely dive into this genus of plants and possibly go for something that isn't going to be causing any harm to kind of being taken out of its natural environment. But this is one that, as I said, it's not necessarily one because it's a newly described one as well. There's not an awful lot. Oh my God, that was a lot of words that I messed up there. There's not an awful lot of information out there because it is newly described. So anything that's newly described, I would always say, go with caution because you don't know what the situation might be. And the last one, I'm ending on a fun one actually, and this is a Heliconia. Heliconia latispatha. And this is very cool because I think this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is part of the same family as kind of the birds of paradise, if I'm not mistaken. But, and I've got some pictures of the blooms on here as well, and I think they're called something like lobster claws or crab claws or something like that. And if you look at the blooms, you'll understand why. Very, very cool. And I think this is one that's a bit more diminutive because obviously I've got the Strelitzia nicolai, and it is a plant that can get quite huge. I don't think this Heliconia, and I don't think, because I think the other bird of paradise is the Strelitzia reginae, it's a smaller one. Obviously this is not a Strelitzia, it's a Heliconia, which is always kind of very similar looking to the birds of paradise, but this is a cool plant because you still get those large paddly kind of banana plant type leaves, but you get some very, very cool blooms. I don't think this is one that has any kind of warnings around it. It's not one that you see very often. So I'd be very curious if anybody does have this or has been growing this for any period of time, what their experiences have been with this. Have they been able to get it to bloom? Because I know from experience that the Nicolai isn't very easy to bloom indoors, and people will always tell you that. But I think the Strelitzia reginae, the slightly smaller one with the orange blooms. I think that you can get to bloom indoors. I don't have it, I've never had it, so I don't know. But if anybody who has grown that in-house and has managed to get it to bloom, please do let us know. But I think that is everything on my list. So hopefully it did not disappoint and it was something slightly interesting. Obviously my wish list is my wish list. I do it for myself, but I share it with you all because I know that there's a lot of people that watch my channel that are a bit like me and they're like weird and unusual plants. But also I am loving the fact that a lot of us are coming back into some of these plants that are maybe a bit easier to find, like some of the aglaonemas that I talked about, the Hoya bella, all of these things that are a bit easier. They're still nice to be on wish lists because there is something to be said after we've all been doing this for as long as we've been doing this. Some easy plants are always a plus. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of us, myself included, that will still go for the pretty, like, prima donna plants, knowing full well what we're going for, whether we like a challenge or not. And I have done a video about some of my more challenging plants, both for warning the people that don't want challenging plants and more for the people that like challenges to also go, here you go, here's your next challenge. But it is nice to have some easy plants once in a while to just kind of get on with and grow without needing an awful lot of attention for you, as well as some of the more interesting ones. Do let me know if you've appreciated some of the warnings that I said about some of these plants. I will try to do that as much as possible with some of my video content moving forward if I do find some information when I'm doing the research, because then at least I can give you a heads up and just go, oh, just be a bit careful with some of these plants, just on the off chance. Because it's nice to get ahead of this thing rather than big scandals coming up where the obvious example would be the Stephania erecta, I think, where a lot of people bought it in throws because everybody wanted it and it became the it plant, only to then realize if you were getting a very established, very mature plant, that there was a very high likelihood that it was poached out of nature because it takes so long to get them to that size. So hopefully, if me and more content creators start doing some of this of kind of calling out plants that might be controversial, not always 100%, but ones to maybe check with the people that you are buying them from to see if they've got some trackability of how these plants were grown and that they were not poached in nature, I think would be a good thing. But enough of me being on my soapbox. Hopefully you've all enjoyed. Do let me know if you had a favorite down below or any plants that you think I might be interested in based on some of the ones that I've currently got on my wish list. But yes, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.